Hey,
Hey, what's up? What's up, man? How you doing?
not much. I'm good. How are you?
Dude, I'm great. I just got done working out and took a cold shower and I laid out my thoughts that I've been procrastinating.
Dude, the best feeling in the world is a cold shower after a good workout. I'm there with you,
It,
man.
yeah, especially since it just gives you so much dopamine that lets you really focus on what you want to. Um,
For sure, for sure.
so yeah, I was gonna before we started, I was gonna show you my my thought process in my notes. It's not too much, but
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I figured out some things, so skip some
Okay.
steps. Luckily, um, are you looking at my screen?
Yeah, give me a sec.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So before I start, I think my issue was like theory overload. I
Mm-hmm.
would just be so excited to learn new things,
Mm-hmm.
and I broke it down like, oh, we obviously want to improve the things that we can control, which is like outside factors like diet, sleep, health, mind state, which are all things I've been working on, in-game factors, etc. But what I've come to the realize is that quite possibly the most important skill for improving faster is questions, like
Mm-hmm.
getting better at asking yourself questions. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then my understanding of learning is that you try to create a mind map, you apply it, you see where it fits in, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
You compare it to how top players do it. You judge how you value it. Like this was the Bloom taxonomy of learning or some shit.
Okay.
And then
Yeah, yeah.
you create your own theories. And then I was like, wow, it really boils down to we learn tools, we integrate them, and then we polish them.
Yeah. It's funny how that works, huh?
Yeah, so lately I've just been thinking about how what's the difference between improving quickly and improving correctly? Cuz everybody, you want to reach the top to the fastest, or you're looking for this quick and easy way, and
Mm-hmm.
and obviously you're still trying to improve, but I don't know, maybe I feel like I need to slow myself down and, just improve correctly and build a foundation.
I
Or
hear
not build a
you.
foundation, but
Build
stop
on,
worrying
yeah.
about yeah, stop worrying about improving the fastest I can and focus on improving the best I can. That's it. Ugh.
Mm-hmm. Dang. Yeah, that's raw. Raw. Good, good, good. So, what would you like to know from me? That makes a lot of sense to me.
Um uh, hold on. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So basically what I thought about was is all right, what are the most important things that are going to make me consistent growth? Because that's improving correctly, right? Would you
Mm-hmm.
say just consistent growth? So I think questions, I think get asking or getting better at asking myself questions is probably the best thing I can do. But I feel like that's kind of a hard thing to go on because it's why do
Right.
we ask questions to get answers? Why do we need answers to learn? How do we ask questions that will help us learn? You get specific. How do you get specific?
Yeah.
But to get specific, you have to go super broad and then et cetera, et cetera.
It all kind of like loops in on itself, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
you need
we could
somewhere to
talk
jump
about
in.
that. Yeah, yeah, we could talk about that, and then I also wanted your opinion on uh what so I put obviously there's a lot of things that go into improving outside factors, simplifying the game, your mentality, but there's also where the merit of creating such a strong game plan that you're able to ask yourself questions easily, to
Mm-hmm.
improve faster. So I thought that made sense.
It
But
does.
also where versus learning getting better at advantage states, so you need less turns, to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm kind of all over the place.
That's fair. Let's try to consolidate everything a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna do more theory. Yippee! But this theory is about, like you said, improving correctly. And so when I think about
Okay.
improving quickly, what I often think about is actions. And so when you see someone improve really quickly, usually what that means is that they kind of like just do new things. And so it's like a Steve player learning a new combo, or a like imagine like someone like a Shulk player. I use Shulk because I'm a Shulk player. Like you teach them a specific like walling pattern, so something that Shulks do a lot since Kome kind of like invented it early on in the game is short hop landing back air and then like rising nair. And so the landing back air keeps them at a distance, and then the rising nair stops them if they try to like whiff punish. And so when you start doing that, you actually see a lot of results suddenly, especially because you're probably playing as people who have never seen this before. And so
Yeah.
like they don't know how to beat it, and you just like do this new thing and you just like improve like really quickly. And so when sometimes I sit down with people and I like usually in my session it's like 90% theory and like 10% things that you can do. You know what I mean? Like these are the ways that you want to think about it, and these are some things that you can like do specifically. And 10%, sometimes it's 0%, right? And the reason why it's such a low percentage of just like do this is because, well, it's very short-lived. And so landing Becca rising there is actually like an awfully bad walling strategy. I think it's like an awful walling strategy. It's a very specific one. It can be strong in certain situations, but it's not very universally applicable, and if you're wrong, you're getting your ass whooped. And so the reason it sucks is because if the opponent understands how it works, they can just like counter it in like 20 different ways, and like it doesn't do anything that your normal gameplay doesn't do. And so like in that regard, it doesn't really fix any specific problems very well either. And so altogether, it's not a very good thing if the opponent understands how it works. And so what happens is improvement quickly is like you add an action, and it deepens your gameplay, and it probably stops working once the opponent knows how it works. Now, the reason why adding an action can work is because while they're learning how to counter it, you're probably learning how to use it better, and so that's going to form the basis of what I think improving correctly is, and improving correctly is choices. And so,
Makes sense.
right, we want to add a choice. And so that is the biggest difference, right? And so like when I look at like really bad players, sometimes I'll be like, hey, this guy has potential. And to me, the reason I see potential is always like I see that he's making choices. And oftentimes if there are bad players, the choices like fucking suck, as in like you're picking like between, I don't know, like Wolf run up forward smash or Wolf jump in landing down air or some shit. Like probably an awful choice to make, but at least there's a choice being made there. Whereas like the mid-level Wolf will just spam short hop in there, and that's just like the action, and there's no choice there, and it probably like deepens his gameplay because it's one of the many like things that he has learned to do. But most mid-level players, they just do actions and they don't make choices. They are just like, okay, I have like these like 20 things I can do, and then I just like pick whatever intuitively makes sense. And because they don't make choices, what happens is that this is often like essentially a monkey see, monkey do. And so what I mean by that is that like you recognize a context and you do what you intuitively learn. And so learn to do. And so what happens there is that you're easily manipulatable. The way I beat all mid-level players is by realizing what context causes them to act, and then I just create that context and like change the situation by the time they act, and then I just like punish them. And so this is actually funny. I was doing a session like 2 hours ago with a Roy player that I actually coached quite a bit, and he's recently getting back into the game, and he played against his Wolf, and his Wolf player, he really didn't lose neutral a lot. But every time that that the Roy player lost neutral, he just got hit really badly by the Wolf. Like this Wolf player was just like hit him once, full combo, hit him twice, charge forward smash. You know what I mean? That kind of shit. And what I told the Roy player is like, okay, here's what you do. You look at like you see how they get like huge reward. That probably means they're committing pretty hard, right? Because like huge reward is usually related to pretty hard commitment or linearity. And so you got to look at under what circumstances are they willing to commit. And what we realize is that like if we entered like a mid-range situation, they would always either like go for like a sort of like grounded combo starter, so like usually like a late dash attack or a grab, or they would like full hop over and like jump in and try to like go over with like a nair or fair and go from there. And so there was no choice there. Well, there was a bit of a choice in the sense that it was dash attack or jump in, but it was always like, okay, mid-range opponents is in center, I'm gonna attack with like one of these options. And so what I told him is like, you're just gonna walk to that position and then dash back. If they dash back, you punish. If they jump, you anti-air. And it's that simple. Now, is that how it's gonna be for every player? No, no, no. But like most mid-level players, you can beat just by understanding this idea of like, okay, it's monkey see, monkey do. And so if you know what they see, you can change what they do. Very, very straightforward. And if you know what they do, you just hit them. That part is
Yeah.
easy. And so the correct improvement is choices. And so we have to understand, okay, well, there's a certain, right? There's certain recognition, and then there's certain reads slash this is also recognition, but generally a little bit more abstract, right? And so this is objective recognition. So this is like, distance, positioning, lag of a move, like just essentially like I see something happening. And with reads, this is
Yeah, you have
more
to pick something. You have to make a choice. That makes sense.
exactly, yeah. And so with reads is more like, okay, I think they'll do X, or I think stage control is more important than pressure, etc., etc. Right? And so these are very subjective. This is also recognition, I guess. We call them reads because you're predicting the future. But we're also recognizing a pattern here. So if we think we'll do X, that is a pattern that we're recognizing, but it's not something that we can kind of like mathematically construct in the same way that we can construct just like a screenshot and say like, okay, well, this is what is happening right now, right? And so these are more about like predicting a future, which is why they're reads, and they're more subjective because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so what you'll find is that if we can make a choice based on objective recognition, we're already doing a lot better than just adding actions, because this is usually more like intuitive based. And so like being able to understand this on a more like objective, quote unquote, scientific level is already like a huge boon. And then if we can add kind of like these subjective elements to it, where we're just saying like, okay, I think this is valuable, I think this is important, I think this is right, just like very much I think type of thinking. If we can add that, that is where we're gonna find a lot of essentially what makes you eventually a top level player if you keep up.
Because with the actions, basically, it's like you're basically gonna have to go back and replace them later on
Yeah,
with habits. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
They don't like
Whereas
actions don't scale.
choices, yeah, yeah. Whereas choices always, I can make better decisions. Or, yeah, yeah, yeah. My forward smash will never work, 100 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it makes sense in my head.
Okay, good, good, good. No, but I get what you mean, right? Like there's certain circumstance under which forward smash works, and so action is just like, oh, I should use forward smash at kill percent sometimes to whiff punish a landing, whereas choices is more like, oh, under these circumstances, a forward smash on the landing makes sense. That's kind of like the
Yeah, yeah,
difference.
perfect. Yeah, yeah. What I was trying to say is, I guess like I can always upgrade the actions I take.
Two
Like,
choices.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Like
exactly.
instead of getting like a weak punish, like then that the improved action can help there, but the choices scale. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what it is. Like a choice can scale because you can always change a choice. And like what I found is that you almost never start making less choices. It does happen, but this is like I think this has only happened once in like the almost 5 years that I'm coaching now, where I told someone, "Hey, you're making too many choices," and that was like a top 5 player in the world. Um, um,
Yeah.
and so for most people, just making more choices is like better. And so when you say there's theory overload, what it sounds like to me is like there's so many things that you could be making choices on, like you don't know what to make choices on, and
Yeah.
that's the hard part. And so I feel that like I think that's a very valid problem. And so like my take on that is to say like you said, you got to grind out a choice, and so we can make choices. Um, we can make choices without thinking about them.
Yeah, I think it happened because I didn't integrate and polish them enough. Like I kind of just moved on a little too fast.
Right. And it takes a long time to integrate and polish a choice.
Yep.
And so the time I actually read a study on this, and so the time that
21 to
they
60 days for habits.
yeah, and so
Build new
this
habits.
this
Yeah.
study said about 2 months, so that aligns with 21 to 60 days. Um, my personal experience is that if you have experience with like these type of choices, right, these type of like new habits, it's closer to like a month. And if it's something new, or it's closer to like 2 months. And if you're rewiring something, it's closer to like half a year. Um,
Yeah.
so like unlearning, right? Like unlearning is
Yeah.
the hardest
Unlearning
part.
takes forever. You have to replace it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to be there for a long time.
And so unlearning is kind of like the basis here. And so we have to know why we are doing what we're doing. And so there's these actions that we have to intuitively learn to do. And so we have to understand our intuition. And so in other words, we make choices, subconsciously or not, based on assumptions. So an example of this, and this is weird, but stick with me. I assume that when it rains outside and I step outside, that I'm gonna get wet. And that
Yeah.
leads to me not wanting to go outside when it rains. Because I also assume that being wet is not a nice experience for me.
Well, yeah, and you swing because you have an assumption on where the opponent. Yes, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Right. And so if we understand that assumption, then from there we can start to change our choice. And so we can say, well, let's say there's a kid and the kid is like, I don't want to go outside, it's raining. And you give them like, I don't know, a rain jacket, raincoat. I don't know what you guys call it, raincoat.
Yeah, something like that.
And what happens is like, oh well, now suddenly I'm not getting wet. That changes the way that I'm gonna be interacting with this situation, right? And so the more we understand why we're making the choice, the more we can interact with the choice. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing, because they're making these actions so intuitively, they're not understanding what choice they're making at all. Like they're not in touch with their own decision making in the slightest. And so what happens is like, how do you make a different choice if you don't even know what choice you're making? Like it's actually absurd if you think about it. Like I don't want to
Yeah.
go outside because it's raining. Okay, sure, but like why does rain sucks? I don't know. I just don't like rain. Okay, like what are we gonna do? No clue. Like we're just fucked, I guess.
I
Um,
feel like you just made a great value Coach Tony comparison.
what do you mean? Oh,
Bro,
true, because he's
you
always like, imagine that.
talking about some
Yeah,
wild shit. Yeah.
I get what you mean. He's always
Dude,
like
I had to say it, bro. It's because I was thinking about the stage control one where he's like, think about an
the
umbrella or
rain.
your
Yeah. I remember that one because that was, I think, his worst.
yeah, like it was so funny. Like, but it's still good.
It was still
It's
good.
weird.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's just
I
weird.
remember because someone in the comments was like, Tony said, I think the simplest way to describe it, and then he just proceeded to use like the least simple way to describe it. But usually, like
I love him though.
I think his door sensor comparison,
Yeah.
it was probably like one of the most poignant sections on any coach's corner we've ever had. Very, very strong
No, he's
comparison.
awesome. He's awesome.
But yeah, so anyway, yeah, so like you gotta know why you're doing what you're doing, and then you can adjust from there. And so like for me personally, so like I've been playing Smash since 2009, and I'll be fair, I had like a 5-year-ish break in between there. So it's not like I've been playing for like 15 years, but 10 years, sure, still a shit ton of time. When I had to relearn the way I use my stage control to fit Ultimate, that took me a year. It took me a year. It's not like that was the only thing I was doing. And so I think if I was fully focusing on that, I could have probably done it in like maybe half a year. But still, it gets kind of boring doing the same thing over and over. So like, let's be fair, it kind of sucks to practice the same thing for half a year straight.
Yeah.
But that is like such a built-in, like deeply built-in thing of your play, right? Like how you use stage control. That can just take so much time to relearn.
Okay, so that has me interested. How long should you like a super important but vague topic like game plan or ledge track? Like how long should you prioritize like improving that and then, go to the next thing, then go back to it, you know?
So the way I like to think about it is that the first step. How long to? Sure. So the first step is to actually be able to make choices on that front. So this is the minimum of what I do.
Yeah. Okay.
And so like if I'm here, right, like from this point onwards, I started playing with what I'm focusing on, mostly just to keep myself interested. Like if you're like single-mindedly focused, like a Mutaking kind of thing where you can just do the same thing over and over. Like if that's you, then you can just do the same thing over and over, sure. But like if that's not you, totally fair. Then I recommend like I said, just like playing with it and just like, you know, switching between things. What I think is you want to get to a point where you have the simplest form of the choice in available to you,
That's it.
right?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yep.
And then from there, you can steadily add until you're at a point where you're capable. And so this is why stage control took so long, partially, is because I got myself to a point where I could
Like,
make
how do you
stage control
simplify
positions.
this?
Well, that wasn't even it. Like, I could simplify
Oh,
it pretty easily in the sense that I could say, well, okay, well, if they're moving backwards, they're safe, and so I won't engage when they move backwards, and when they're moving forwards, they're unsafe, and so I try to punish them when they move forward. This is essentially what I did. Sounds very simplistic because it is. But that's all it really came down to at first. Is like when they move forward, I hit them. When they move backwards, I don't. And I don't have to corner them because I play Shulk and I have a timer. And so instead of cornering them, I can just like play Campy and eventually they'll have to approach me. Very straightforward, right?
dude, I
Um
love the way you just said that.
and from that point onwards, the reason it took so long is because I would like explore these other aspects of play and it would change the way I would think about stage control. And so I would adjust the choice I'm making. I would like add these like little choices or these little options. And I would try to practice that, and then I would go back to like learning some new things, and I would learn something new about like how that would impact stage control, and I would go back, right? And so it's like a back and forth kind of thing where, as you learn, like it's the improvement circle that I'm sure you've seen me talk about before, right? Where
Yeah, like
every time you go
y-
around the circle, it takes longer and longer.
yeah, it goes forward. Like you go forward once you complete the circle and you know, you go back like a circle.
No,
Maybe
actually,
I didn't see you talk.
no, that's fine, that's fine. I'm gonna try to share another screen. Let's see if I can do it. Sometimes Discord kicks me out. Um, I need to stop streaming. Okay, if it kicks me out, give me a sec. Okay, there you fucking go. I'm gonna share my screen. You're gonna have to mute the stream though, because it's gonna echo my voice.
Mute.
Okay.
How do you mute the stream?
Right.
Just mute.
How do you mute the stream?
You
You're
want me to
not.
just mute my mic?
No. Because
That
like,
work?
are you hearing an echo or not?
I didn't open the stream yet.
Okay, I
Okay.
think you can right click on the
Oh
stream and mute.
yeah, I did it. I
Okay.
muted it.
Cool. So, Discord is just tripping, so we have to do it like this. So the idea of the circle is this, right? So imagine this is like our starting point, and so like we're learning Smash, and we learn that rolls are really good. That's like one of the first things that people learn, and so we learn that rolls are
Yeah.
really good, and then we learn if we want to kill them, we should use Smash attacks, and then we learn, oh, we have to actually like up B to get back to the stage. Okay, weird. And then we learn that if you smash the stick to the side, you can actually dash. Now that we've learned all of this, we got back to the starting point and we're like, you know what? Now that I've learned about dashing, rolling sounds a lot less useful. So now I'm looking at rolling in a different way. And because I've learned all of this, I actually, like, because of all of that, I actually am learning about jumps, another way to move forward. Now that I know all of this, suddenly, smash attacks are very different. I have access to jumps. I can do aerials. Whoa, that's different. And because of that, I now, like, what do? After aerials? I get whiff punish. Wait, whiff punish? What the fuck is that? And, you know, you go back to recovery, you learn about double jumping off stage, you go back to this, you learn about this, and now you made full circle, and you've learned about all these new things, and suddenly rolling is an entirely different thing. Oh, after I whiff, I can roll to avoid the whiff punish. That's something that you only know because you learned about whiff punishing.
So it's
And
kind of
so,
like a mind map.
yeah, well, yeah, it is. But the way, what I'm trying to illustrate here is that, like, this is diminishing returns. And so the idea is the first time you learn about the game, like, let's say the first, like, week,
Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying.
you learn
Yeah.
about everything, like all the four things
It,
you know. The
it
second
takes you
thing,
much longer to go through the circle. Yeah, I
exactly.
see what you mean. Yeah.
And so this is what happens with stage control, right? And so like you start off making a simple choice, and then like you learn about something else, and you go around the circle, and then like you because you learned about that, you add a little bit to your stage control, and then you play around and you learn about that something else you were learning about and something, and then you go back to stage control, and you're like, oh wait, stage control is even different, more different, and like that, you're kind of like constantly improving like this very like generic complex thing, and so that is kind of like what you're talking about when you say like, oh, how do you know when to stop learning about like this idea of like game plan or stage control? And so my answer is you're going to continuously learn about these things. And so all you can really do is get to the point where you can actually make choices and like again, the simplest choice. In my case, if they move forward, they're weak. If they move backwards, they're strong. Okay. That's it. If I try to whiff punish, right? Like if they continue mashing, I can whiff punish, and if they play defensive, I can set up pressure. Okay, very simple. Is that going to beat a good player? No. Will it allow you to start making choices here? Yes. And so like a big skill that you need is to recognize a choice being available, and a big skill you need is to recognize what goes into making that choice. Again, most people live their lives on autopilot, and so they never do these things. They don't recognize what choices are available. They never had to, because it's obvious. Oh, do you want to go to college, or do you want to just start a job? Okay, or do you want to like live at home with your parents? It like
Yeah.
very intuitive choice. You don't really have to think about that shit. Similarly, right? Like recognizing what goes into a choice, dude. How many Smash players out there do you think are like actively making choices? Not a lot. Most people don't see it as a strategy game because they don't understand that there's like long-term effects of your choices. And so what happens is they go monkey see, monkey do. Oh, they're a mid range. Okay, intuitively it feels right to like full hop over their shit and like landing wolf nair, and so that's what I'm gonna do. But like it doesn't make any sense because they don't recognize what goes into making the choice. And so just understanding these things is very important. And then what I recommend from there is to VOD review and see if these choices start seeping into your decision making subconsciously. And so what I realized is that when I started actively making these choices surrounding stage control, I started slowly just like doing this all the time. It's kind of like the what is it? There's like this very cheesy saying about like my mind is a garden, and the ideas that I give attention to are like the plants that I water, some shit like that.
Okay.
Don't give me that reaction, man. Um, but like my point is, I get what they mean in the sense that like if you spend a lot of time on stage control, then your brain is gonna get attuned to these types of choices, and it's gonna be easier to make them. It's like, you know what the actual quote is? If you stare too deep into the abyss stares back into you. You know, something that you spend a
Yeah.
lot of time on becomes a part of your subconscious.
Yeah.
That is what that quote means.
Yeah, if you value it a lot, your subconscious is going to naturally want to get good at it.
Exactly. And so if you spend a lot of time like actively making choices in stage positioning, you're going to subconsciously start making those choices more and more frequently. And so what I found is that without really like actually trying to grind it into my subconscious, it actually became part of my decision making quite easily. And I'll be fair, I gave myself grace. It's not like I'm sitting there like, oh, every choice is now stage control related. Like I still fucked up a lot. But you got to keep
Yeah.
in mind, right? This game is fast, and so like being like keeping something in mind, just like let's say 50% of the time, is already a huge accomplishment. And so like that, like I think the first time I realized like, oh shit, I'm actually doing it, is when I realized I did it about like 20 to 30% of the time. Which at the time I was like, wait, that fucking blows. And now I realize like that is actually like really crazy. Like 20 to 30%. Like imagine like in a single like minute, how many choices am I making? Like probably like about 100. Like if we're talking about like actual choices, right? Like not the including like some subconscious ones, right? But like I'm like,
Crazy to think about.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so
But
like
we definitely are.
that is like 20 seconds per minute, 20 to 30 seconds. No, about 20 seconds per minute that I'm like actively working on stage control. That's fucking huge. And so, like I gave myself a little bit of grace. And I tell myself, 20, 30% is nice. And I wasn't even grinding it out, right? And so when you grind it out, you try to turn it into like 70, 80, 90. I mean, 100 is not very realistic in my opinion, but sure, we can get close to 100. But yeah, and so like you're gonna see a lot of progress in this subconsciously. And I think a lot of the grinding is just like the doing it, like you're actively turning it into a choice. And then you don't have to do it for 6 months straight, but if you just like periodically spend a session here and there on doing it, that's gonna like keep it fresh and keep you keeps your mind engaged on it, and then eventually when you stare into the stage control stares back into you, and you become someone who values that. And so again, like at the end of the day, like approving correctly, it's all about like the choices. And so if you say, well, I moved on before it actually became part of my autopilot, I would argue you're probably making choices on these fronts more than you give yourself credit to. It's just that it's probably like maybe like 10, 20, 30% of your actual choices, which
Hmm.
means that if you look back at it, it might not mean much, right? So if you think about, for example,
That's
stage control.
crazy. You're so right. Holy fuck.
If
Holy fuck.
you think about stage control, right? Let's say you're trying to corner someone. How many times in a row do you have to dash forward to corner someone when they're in center?
3.
Yeah, about 3 times. I think that's fair. And so, like, if you're only playing stage control 30% of the time, are you gonna actually corner someone?
No.
No. That's the part that fucking sucks about like strategy, is that you're planning for the future. And so if you're only planning for the future like 10, 20, 30% of the time, then like you're never getting to the future that you're planning for. And so that's why you don't give yourself grace. Is because like you're seeing, like you're probably seeing the little bits where you're setting up for it, but you're not cashing out on it. And so you feel like you're
Yeah.
fucking up. But you're not fucking up. You're doing just great. It's just that you have to shift the mindset. Okay?
Yeah, no, that's funny. Cause like I like thought super deeply about my game plan. Like you remember it might not have been last time, but it was one of the times I was like, yeah, dude, I don't see how Joker has a like good win cons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which I
But
mean,
yeah,
I understand where that comes from too. I think.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, part of like I figured out that his game plan is just weird because it's like I feel like his 1-2 is, being at the edge of their range,
Mm-hmm.
which makes them have to decide between getting closer, cornering themselves, or playing my range.
Yeah.
Like that's the one. And then the 2 is like using my burst range or like overshooting, etc.
Yeah.
And like dude, I put in like I probably grinded like 40 hours in like 3 weeks, like VOD reviewing, theory crafting, note taking,
Mm-hmm.
and then like I went and played and I just did so bad. And
Uh-huh.
it was so discouraging, I'm not gonna lie.
That's
But
fair. Yeah.
I played against Wanpi.
Uh-huh. He's really good.
Yeah, and we had some fire games.
Nice. Good.
2-0 but close type beat. Yeah. Um yeah. So this is going back to like the how long to improve something. So I feel like the most important factors in consistency are game plan, advantage state, and improving your weaknesses. Um,
Yeah, sure.
and I guess I can't ask you like how should I value that because I have to figure that out on my own. But like if I want to be as consistent as possible, if I want to get better and beat everybody, which like how should I rotate improving them, or what should I prioritize first? Like not master, but like attempt to. So that way, like it just makes me that like a consistent like wall.
Okay. So we have advantage state, game plan, and the final one was fixing weaknesses, right?
Yeah, like replacing bad habits, I guess.
Okay, sure.
You know.
So I think that kind of ties into game plan. Is that fair?
Okay. Uh, yeah, yeah, I guess so. I mean,
Okay.
because you can have weaknesses everywhere, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I mean game plan can exist everywhere. But
You
it
know what?
is
You're right.
I do get what you mean. Like game plan is the most relevant to neutral because that's where game plan is most complex. And
Yeah,
so the thing about advantage state that I think is advantage state is the closest to actions out of all the game states. So if you think about actions versus choices, right? Advantage
really.
state is the closest to actions. Yeah, because like a lot of the time, if you're in an advantage, who's stronger, you or them?
Me.
Okay. And so like what is what is more important than the information that we're getting or the information that we're giving? What do you think?
the information that we're giving because they're stuck there.
Exactly. And so we don't really have to predict the future as much because we can just kind of like act towards a future that we want because they don't have as strong of an influence on the outcome.
But on ledge, don't you have to make a lot of choices? Like,
Yeah.
are like for instance,
Mhm.
like they have a lot of different like positions you can ledge trap from.
Sure.
To entice certain options, but like you have to decide on if you're just gonna let them hang, if you're gonna try to get a high reward option, if you're gonna play to positioning so that way you can safely corner pressure them.
Yeah, and so like that is true, and that would be like the more correct way of going about it. But let me give you an alternative, okay? And I'm sure like every region has this guy. It's the guy like the Byleth player or whoever who just like forward smashes your ledge jump, or the Wolf player who like forward smashes your normal getup.
The D to D, it's D to D
Okay,
with the
sure.
jet hammer.
Yeah, sure. And so
The
like,
jump.
do you think he's like making a choice, or do you think he's performing an action?
Well, most of the time he does it to cover jumps, so he's
Yeah. So
that's a choice and an action, right?
well, I mean, yeah, and so like, of course, like I'm not saying it's not a choice, but it's the closest to actions, right? And so what I mean by that is
Okay.
that like we're not really like if you just read the jump if you want to read the jump, and if you're wrong, we just go back to neutral. If we do that in neutral and we're wrong, we just get fucking turbo fucked. You know what I mean? Like we jump in
Yeah.
neutral, we do like full hop up air, and then we get like up smash on our landing. Bye bye. Um, so like that's what I mean. Is like this is more of a one player game, right? We can just do what we want. Does that make us consistent? Not necessarily, but it's more consistent than just doing what we want if we're in neutral. Okay, and so like that's the thing is like because there are less options, we can just kind of like do what we want. We don't really have to factor in the opponent as much. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, that makes sense. So I should just do what I want when I'm in advantage.
Well, you should. No, that's not what I'm saying.
No, I know, I know.
Okay. Okay, you got me there. I was worried for a second. I was like, wait. But what I mean by this is that generally because actions are easier than choices, right? We can agree on that. What happens is that advantage state is really good bang for your buck. In other words, very little complexity for pretty high reward. And so if you want like again, like what is fast improvement? It's the actions, right? So like if you want like a boost of like results right now, and that's totally fair if you want that, just play around advantage state, right? Like just get a really good advantage state. That's totally fair.
So,
Game plan, this is more like the choices, right? And so this is
hold on
more
before we go
go
there.
ahead, go ahead.
Like, so for advantage state, like if I want to improve it as quickly as possible or correctly, quickly, whatever, I should focus on simplifying it since it's very little. It's not that complex.
Yeah, so what I would recommend is I would recommend that if you want to see fast improvement on advantage state ASAP, you try to figure out, okay, what do I want in these situations? And then just try to like get really efficient into getting what you want.
Okay. Okay.
That is
Yeah.
like the easiest, like this is really
No,
like,
that's a great way to put it.
just
Yeah.
like figure out what you want and then efficiently get it. And so like this will scale into like really, really high levels of play because most people don't practice their disadvantage because it's not fun to practice disadvantage.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard. Like if you're just getting ledge strapped by somebody way better than you, you're like,
What do I do?
they cover every option. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and so what it comes down to is you figure out what you want, you play towards it, and you'll generally find decently decently simple situations with decently high success for how simple it is. Game plan, this is pure choices, right? And so like this is
Your choices. Yep.
yeah, this is way more um way more long-term payoff, but way less short-term payoff.
Okay.
And so both of these are fine, right? Like you're gonna have to work on your game plan eventually anyway. But if you're at
Yeah.
a point where you're like, I'm feeling bad about my improvement and like I'm like I don't know if I'm progressing, Dude, get some advantage state in your system. I've done this. Like, there's no shame in this. I've done this as Shulk. I know. I remember I was at Wanted, a French event, and Riddles was over as well, and I played Riddles, and we had like these really competitive sets, and every single time he would like just like clutch them out. And afterwards, I was like, dude, I was talking to Semi, my friend. I was like, dude, I do so well against Riddles, but like he hits me and I fucking die, and I hit him and he doesn't die, and afterwards, I think I spent like 2-3 months just like working on like getting my combos right, working on being a little sharper in advantage, working on having better edge guards, and just like again, very much from a perspective of like, okay, what do I want to achieve? And then like I added in choices like way later, and I just got a lot better at all of this stuff. And eventually, what happened is my opponents understood what I wanted more because they like I didn't do this before, so they weren't ready for it, and then they adjusted, and I wasn't as explosive, and so I got really like I got a lot of like a big boost in results for like like I did this for like 2 months, and then like for another like month or two afterwards I was doing really well, and then it stabilized back to normal as my opponent kind of like started playing around this more, and then I started adding choices, and then suddenly my advantage state became better, and like it was better at the end of the day, right? But the nice thing here is like when I play a random afterwards, I would just like blow them up because I knew like I can hit them and just go for what I want, and they wouldn't be ready because I've been through that phase where I can just go for it and my opponent's not ready because that's literally what I practiced. And so advantage state is really nice to just like it's nice in the long term, but I would say in the long term a little bit less effective because again, the better your opponent is, the less it matters, right? It all kind of boils down to similar RPS anyway. Whereas game plan, this can allow you, like if you're playing against a better player, quote unquote better player, or like let's say a higher skill player, not higher than you, but higher in the skill bracket. This is gonna get you wins more often because most of the time, if they're like higher in the skill bracket, they generally know how to play this disadvantage. It's pretty generic. But game plan can get super nuanced.
And
And if
also
you,
like
yeah,
I
go
feel
ahead.
like game plan can basically create a wall between you and like lower level players than you.
Yeah, sure, it does, right? Having an advantage state focus against lower level players can allow you to destroy them, but it also means sometimes you get destroyed. Whereas like a game plan, like when I see like a specific weakness in the game plan, I can just like do the same thing over and over until I win. So that's nice too, but it takes way longer to get there. It takes way longer to get
Yeah,
there.
no, you just said like finding weaknesses in someone's game plan, and I was like, bro, I don't even know how to do that. Fuck.
Yeah, so for example, that's what I said with like the wolf player, where like we put them in like the mid range and then he like dash attacks in or full hops in. Like that's a weakness that I can find. But that's because like the finding of the weaknesses, this is a side note, right? But that is usually more like, okay, I expect certain behavior. And so if that doesn't happen, I
Ooh.
identify it as a weakness.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Yeah. Like basically, if I figure out how a game plan of this matchup is played and they don't, follow a specific part, you're like, ooh, weakness.
Exactly. It's that easy. And so for this wolf, the reason I could identify that as weakness so quickly is because like generally when I think about mid-range, I'm not thinking about full hopping in because that's reactable. And I'm not thinking about dash checking in the first interaction because that's super committal. And so both of these are super committal. And so I kind of like figured out, okay, he's committing hard. And so the weakness is that he doesn't know how to play in like lower amounts of commitment. So I'm talking about like short hop in, drift mix-ups, maybe walks even. Or just engaging in dashbacks in general. And so what I do is I do all the things that only lose to that. You know what I mean? And so I'll play more defensively. And if you play too defensively, how do you beat that? Well, by dashing up and spacing a tilt, or by walking around, or by feinting, or by short hop landing spaced aerial. And because this guy doesn't show that he can do those things, I can just like abuse it and win for free. Very, very straightforward in that regard. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
All right. Cool, cool, cool.
Um. Yeah. The other thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like I feel like my favorite form. Well, obviously I love playing, or I guess it's not obvious, but I love playing the game. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I fucking love playing it all the time. But my favorite form of practice is like theory crafting, thinking, like taking down notes, VOD reviewing. But I feel like I feel like there's a way for me to improve, like to integrate it into my gameplay without having to play. Because the issue I'm having right now is that I just got started a job and they literally took all the 3 days I could go to tournaments.
Oh shit.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I guess I could play online and do it, but what I was curious of is like my idea on how I can improve it in my like integrate it without actually playing is I can watch how other like I can watch how Leo integrates it per
Mm-hmm.
se, but or I could think about how it's integrated, but I'm not sure. So now I kind of just have a fuck ton of notes I've been taking, and I haven't been able to integrate them well enough. I
Mm-hmm.
guess
Mm-hmm.
maybe I just have to go back through my cycle, the learning cycle.
I think all you gotta do is make sure that you understand what kind of choices your notes lead to, and then work on the choice, making those choices.
Mm, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. What did you say? You said work on what
Yeah.
kind of choices they lead to.
Yeah. So you have all these notes. You got to figure out what kind of choices do those nodes lead to, and then try to make those choices.
Mhm. Okay.
All
And
right.
I was gonna ask you about questions, but I just remembered that like if I want to get more specific, I could just do who, what, when, where, why.
Yeah.
The
Go for
simple
that.
way of doing
That's a good way of doing it for sure. All right. Yeah. I actually have to go. I have a meeting in like 3 minutes.
it. Oh, I'm so sorry, bro.
No,
Thank
no,
you
no.
for
Don't
your
worry
time.
about it. I appreciate it.
Uh, yeah, no, this was awesome. I love talking about the game, especially with you. That was fire.
It was a good
Uh,
session. Yeah, we got a lot done.
okay, yeah. Before I'll let you go, but when should the next time I get coaching from you be? Because I still have that hour session I want to, clock in.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Next time you feel stuck, right? So this is something you felt stuck with. Next time you feel stuck, we can sit down again. Make sense?
Okay. Okay.
If you want to do it earlier, that's fine. Like we can do like a check-in kind of thing. But that's only like if you want to, and that's totally fine, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're like let's say we're like 2 months out, or like maybe even a month, and you spend some time trying to implement this, and like you're not sure if whether what you implemented makes sense, we can like check in, but like that's up to you, right? Like to me, if you're like busy making choices and you can like even if the choices suck, you're probably doing the right thing.
Okay. And do you think there's merit in comparing the decisions I make now to how I used to play?
Yeah, there is for
Okay.
sure. Yeah, yeah. That's the best way to measure progress, right? You cannot like measure like just in isolation. You got to measure against something else, right? And so we got to measure against what it used to be to understand where it
And
is right now.
that's it. I gotta, and if I want to keep working on specific things, I have to set, micro goals or not micro goals,
Exactly.
but goals. And then,
Yeah,
okay, okay,
yeah. You just
all
got to
right.
do it step by step.
Hey, thank you. Sorry to have you, running late.
No, it's fine. We went a little bit over. You got your 1 hour session after all. Um,
Yeah, I want.
yeah, I'll send you the notes. I've already sent them. No, I'll send you the notes and I'll send you the VOD later. I will.
Yeah, I shouldn't need the VOD. I was recording it.
Oh,
Oh wait,
okay.
never mind. Yes, I do.
Okay, I'm gonna send you the VOD then. We'll be fine. All right. Yeah, thank you so much. And
Thank you. Have a
yeah,
good meeting.
thank you, thank you. Good luck with the improvement, man.
Thank you.
All right, take
Bye.
care.